Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Frankowitz, and I'm here to talk to you about The Last Waltz by the band. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to say hi to all my Music League friends out there, and especially to thank Fish the Commish for putting this all together and having another great year of Music League. It's always been a lot of fun for me. Now, while I'd like to think I have a really eclectic musical taste, I've always had one foot firmly planted in the past. Even when I was a 12-year-old, one of my very first CDs was a Motown album of a soundtrack of a movie of 1983. I have liked some contemporary music. I was a big California skater punk fan. I was really into Rancid and Pennywise, and then I got into Dropkick Murphys and the Flogging Molly, mostly from the influence of my brother Harry, who spoke about the Punk-O-Rama 2 album. That's really where it started for the both of us. But, having having a sibling that's only 2 years older, we really shared a lot, and I got a lot of my musical influence from them. But when I wasn't stealing their CDs, I was listening to classics on I-95 or WHUD, so it was always older stuff that I was really into. Now, even though I was pretty well versed in classic rock, I wasn't too familiar with the band other than, their classics, The Weight and Up on Cripple Creek, both sung by Levon Helm. It wasn't until about 2015 that I had heard of The Last Waltz, and that was, through the influence of my other sibling, Steven. We were listening to Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, who were kind of a soul R&B throwback band that was around in the mid 2000s, and we were listening to a live version of their hit song "Son of a Bitch," and towards the end of the song, they broke into this other song that sounded like real familiar, but I don't know if I had ever really heard it. And it was a version of "The Shape I'm In," which is a song by the band. And my brother told me, "Oh yeah, you should hear the version of it from The Last Waltz." And I of course asked, what's that? What's that all about? And the rest is history for me. Now, the band is made up of 4 Canadians: Rick Danko, Garth Hudson, Richard Manuel, and Robbie Robertson, and one American, Levon Helm. And they started out backing Ronnie Hawken. They were first known as the Hawks. And then they famously were the backing band for Bob Dylan when he went electric in the mid-'60s. They bought a house in upstate New York near Saugerties, and Bob Dylan and the band put together a whole bunch of really, really great songs that turned into the album Music from Big Pink, and Big Pink was the name of the house, in 1968. Now, while I really truly love that album, Music from Big Pink, it's not the one I'm going to talk about tonight, because that wasn't the album that got me into the band. The first song I ever posted to Music League was Chest Fever, a song from Music from Big Pink, but again, that's not what we're going for this evening. We're going to discuss The Last Waltz. This album was recorded live at the famed Winterland Ballroom on Thanksgiving of 1976. There were 5,000 turkey dinners delivered to the audience. There was ballroom dancing, and the concert itself began at 9 p.m. This concert would become turned into a movie filmed by Martin Scorsese. The film and the album were both billed as the last hurrah for this band whose hard living had taken a toll on them, and they were about ready to finish their life on the road. The album begins, and throughout the entire album and movie is the theme from The Last Waltz, which is, as you might guess, is a classic waltz. Shortly after that, we hear Up on Cripple Creek, which is an absolute standard, which I had known from my I-95 days. But then right after that, the third song is Who Do You Love? I'd known this song from the George Thorogood version, again from I-95, but this one was by Ronnie Hawkins, again, the lead singer of the Hawks, who the band had started with years earlier. The fourth song on the album is Helpless, and this is a song by Neil Young. Absolutely stunning version of a great song, and this song really helped me to go down a Neil Young rabbit hole pretty soon after I went down my The Band rabbit hole. After that, we've got Stage Fright, which is a classic by the band, and then Joni Mitchell comes out to sing her song Coyote, which had just come out earlier that year. The next song on the list is a weird one. When you hear about the cast of characters that were there that night, this one doesn't seem to make sense. It was Neil Diamond sings a song called Dry Your Eyes. And while I'm not a huge Neil Diamond fan, he does a great job with this, and I had read later that the reason he was there that night was Robbie Robertson, one of the members of the band, was starting his own production company or his own label or something like that, and Neil Diamond's most recent album was something that Robbie Robertson wanted to promote. There's a little famous line that I had heard that backstage Neil Diamond and Neil Young met each other, and Neil Young reaches out and shakes his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Neil Sedaka." Now, the list of friends and guests that were there that evening is like a who's who of rock and roll of the time. You had Dr. John singing Such a Night. Paul Butterfield and his little orchestra were there. Muddy Waters played some great blues songs, Mannish Boy. Eric Clapton was there. You had Van Morrison. How can I forget Van Morrison? He was another one that, I knew Brown Eyed Girl, but that, after seeing this album, this is another one that sent me down a rabbit hole of album after album of great music by Van the Man. He's gone a little crazy since then, but he made some great music in the 60s and 70s. Of course, the great Bob Dylan was there to give a set. There was another little famous story that came out of that. He didn't really want to do the concert and was kind of convinced at the last minute. And reportedly, he stole the film from Martin Scorsese on the night of the Last Waltz concert and refused to hand them over until he could negotiate which songs made it onto the album and into the movie. Of course, the star of the show was the band themselves. I always respected the band. I really feel like they're blue-collar musicians. Everybody in the band, save for one, Garth Hudson, has sung lead vocals on a couple of songs. Levon Helm manages to sing and play drums at the same time, which is quite a sight to see. Two of my favorites that I'd really like to discuss here before I wrap things up are The Shape I'm In and Ophelia. Now, The Shape I'm In was a sadly prophetic song sung by Richard Manuel, who took his own life, a lot of drinking, a lot of drug problems, and that song, it's really shattering. If you hear this version of it, he was not in great shape. His voice was pretty shot, and it's a really tough song to listen to, knowing how he ended up. The song has a line that goes, "I just spent 16 days in the jailhouse for the crime of having no dough, and now I'm back out on the street for the crime of having nowhere to go. Save your neck or save your brother. It's one or the other." Now, my absolute favorite song on this album is got to be Ophelia. Song by Levon Helm about a love that was never meant to be. It's this beautiful song. I don't know what it does to me. It's got a little bit of southern rock. I guess it's Bob Dylan meets the Allman Brothers meets a horn section. I don't know. It's just one of my all-time favorites. I also listened to this album at a time when I was moving from one house to another, and my wife was expecting our first child. So it was something that we had a lot of downtime. We were doing a lot of nesting, and it was a great chance to listen to this album a couple times through. And like I said, this sent me down several different rabbit holes, including Van Morrison, Neil Young, and Joni Mitchell. This entire album has been in my rotation pretty much since then, 2015. And hopefully you'll get a chance to listen to it if you're not familiar with it yet, and hopefully it becomes part of yours. All right, so this is me signing off, Tom Frankwitz again, for my little discussion with The Last Waltz. Bye-bye.